The Lucayan people. 700 AD is said to be the year a group of Taino people called the Lucayan migrated from Cuba and Hispaniola to the Bahamas, becoming the first inhabitants of the Bahamas. The Lucayans inhabited the Bahamas for 800 years or more. The population was around 40,000. Archeological evidence showed that most of the population inhabited the largest islands of the archipelago, but they also inhabited the smaller islands. Evidence also shows the Lucayans inhabited the Turks and Caicos Islands. The Lucayans are described as a Western Tiano group. The Western Tiano inhabited Cuba, Jamaica, and the Bahamas. Though they were closely related to other Taino groups, the Lucayans did have cultural differences that helped to distinguish the various groups of Taino. They spoke a Taino language that was distinct to their culture. I do not know the name of the language, but as they developed as a culture, the language became distinct to them. They were known to live in chiefdoms that consisted of many families living in thatched huts made of plant and animal materials. The Lucayan word for hut is Canaan. Christopher Columbus and his men described the Lucayans as very beautiful people. They considered the Lucayan women as some of the most beautiful women in the world. Many of the European men left their homes to be with Lucayan women. The men were regarded as very tall, dark, and handsome. Their skin was bronze colored and their hair was straight and black and usually cut short. Both the men and women wore customary body paint, tattoos, and traditional scarification. The women wore cotton skirts while the men wore cotton loincloths. They decorated themselves with gold and other precious metals and stones as nose rings, earrings, bracelets, and more. They were said to have practiced head flattening to elongate their skulls. Hunting, fishing, gathering, and farming are how they sustained themselves. Their crops usually consisted of cassava, agave, tobacco, cotton, sweet potatoes, peanuts, beans, papaya, guava, pineapples, and much more. Lucayans were also skilled craftsmen. They created pottery that is classified as palmetto ware, abaco red ware, and cricket island ware. They also carved canoes to travel between the islands. Weapons, tools, bowls, and other everyday items were also expertly carved by the Lucayans. 1492 is the year Christopher Columbus and his men arrived in the Bahamas. In less than 30 years, the Lucayan population was either completely or almost wiped out by the Europeans. As a child growing up in the state of Florida in the 80s and the 90s, I was taught that Columbus discovered America. I always asked, how could he discover something that people already inhabited? I also always wondered who the original inhabitants of the Caribbean islands were. Now that I know, and you know as well, that the Taino and other indigenous groups of people lived on the islands close to 1,000 years before dusty old Columbus got lost. To the Lucayans of the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos, we proudly stand on your shoulders. For more information, please visit my website at www.ontheshoulders1.com. You can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/OTSOG. Catch this next video right here coming up at this end screen because you're going to like this one too. Peace out.